And look who's here. He is former top FBI special agent. He's the author of the book, The Fall of the FBI. He's Tom Baker. Let's explain who Tom Baker is. He's considered a legend inside the FBI. He's been a special agent for 33 years. He oversaw U.S. law enforcement in Asia Pacific, Western Europe, much of Africa. He was one of the first 8 FBI agents on the scene when President Ronald Reagan was shot. Great to have you on, Tom. First, let's get your reaction. Biden's Justice Department is going after, the House GOP they want subpoenas. The House GOP Judiciary wants to subpoena FBI officials for using counterterrorism and criminal assets to target school board parents as domestic terrorists. The House GOP wants that. FBI says this is premature, but Tom, the DOJ stonewalled 2 years of this. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's as our friend Andy McCarthy said, it's kind of ironic. The FBI and the DOJ would never tolerate anybody trying to negotiate one of their subpoenas. I think the correct course of action is for the Bureau and the Department to cooperate with a legitimate congressional committee looking at some very important issues. So,
Tom, what's your sense of the FBI culture today? Because, the Hill reports the White House is setting up its own rapid response team against House GOP probes. But we've got FBI whistleblowers multiple FBI whistleblowers testifying under oath in depositions to House Judiciary about political bias across the U.S. government, Democrat political bias. What's your sense about what's going on?
Well, I think it started under Robert Mueller when he was director. And he set about deliberately, he said it, he told us this many times, to change the FBI's culture, and that's the word he used, from a law enforcement agency to an intelligence-driven agency. And that's had a lot of unintended consequences and a lot of bad consequences.
So are the Twitter files just the tip of the iceberg? What upsets you and worries you the most? I mean, if it's dozens, if not hundreds, of FBI and government workers actively seeking to censor U.S. citizens for their viewpoints. It goes from the FBI, CIA to the CDC, DHS, HHS. What upsets you most about this story?
Well, that goes to the heart of our constitutional responsibilities. The First Amendment to the Constitution, which is something we used to study and cherish when I was a new agent, we spent a lot of time on it, is sacrosanct. And the federal government, federal agencies cannot interfere or censor American speech, American citizen speech. Yet here we have, it's clearly been documented by the Twitter files. I don't think there's any dispute about it now, that they engaged Twitter to suppress and censor speech. That is just beyond the bounds, beyond the constitutional guidelines that a lot of us live with and accepted in the FBI.
So, what's wild about this story, and Jonathan Turley points this out, Tom, that Democrats, he says they're bringing back the Red Scare of the McCarthy era, accusing opponents of being Russian assets, of Russian disinformation. Tom, what do you think of that?
Well, I heard him during the hearing on Thursday. He and I sat beside each other in the hearing room, and I saw his account in the New York Post, and he's right absolutely on the money. And it's a darn shame, because the Democrats should join with the Republicans. This should be a bipartisan effort to help secure and safeguard Americans' liberty. Ultimately, this kind of behavior could threaten people on the left as well as the right, and they have to come to a realization of that and put a stop to it.
Well, that's the point, that if you turn the U.S. government into a political attack machine, it could go after Democrats one day, right?
Absolutely. And it's just a line that should not be crossed. And it's been crossed. And the FBI has to answer some questions about that. And hopefully they're straightening out this mess internally. We certainly hope so.
So, but the media and, people in government who've gone on to be on the media, watch Democrat Claire McCaskill do exactly what Jonathan Turley is talking about on MSNBC right after the hearings that you testified. Claire McCaskill is denouncing Senator Chuck Grassley, Senator Ron Johnson, former Representative Tulsi Gabbard as Russian apologists and assets. Watch this.
Look at this. I mean, all three of those politicians are Putin apologists. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard loves Putin.
Is that true? What do you think?
That's That's a terrible smear to say against an American who served in Congress, an American who's still in the Army Reserve, who served in 3 combat zones. Anyone who listened to her very temperate, very reasonable testimony on Thursday afternoon would never say that. That is really beyond the pale.
So, you know, the Democrat Party used to be a great defender of free speech. Hillary Clinton's team called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset. Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell attack opponents as Russian assets. Adam Schiff demanded Twitter censor journalist Paul Sperry. Democrats push this debunked Trump-Russia collusion theory that Trump helped Russia hack DNC and Hillary emails. The Clinton campaign and DNC funded that theory and put it inside the FBI. They accused Carter Page of being a Russian asset. The FBI was warned the dossier appeared to be the result of Russian disinformation. So you see the thread here. We've been living with this since 2016. Democrats accusing others of being Russian assets, and it's all fallen apart.
Well, yes, and as regards the FBI, every time one of these incidents happened, and you just went back over them, going back to the Russian hoax, people in the FBI who trespassed, so to speak, have been put out the door, originally with McCabe and Strzok and Comey, and in recent times, up to this last fall, when an assistant agent in charge in Washington Field was allowed to walk out the door, who has been implicated in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story. But what a lot of us would like to see is the current management of the FBI, up to and including Director Wray, address the underlying cultural problem that allows that to happen.
Got it. Tom Baker, thanks for your service to our country. It's good to see you. We'll have you back on again soon. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening.